Some stories break you, some heal you. But here at my 90s love story, we're here to fill your heart. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. After Elias died, I found a message on his phone that had never been sent. I like you too. The person it was addressed to was me. It was the 10th year I had loved him in secret. But the last message he ever actually sent me had said something else. I'm getting married. Stop clinging to me. The old house back in my hometown was about to be torn down, so I had to hurry back to pack up before they leveled it. I don't know what made me do it, but on the way out, I doubled back and pushed open the door of the house next door. Green moss had swallowed the yard. The place looked abandoned, a few panes of the windows broken out. And there, sitting neatly in the drawer of the study desk, was a phone, a model from many years ago, the kind they don't even sell anymore. On the yellowed clear case was a little pink cartoon snake. I'd stuck that sticker on myself back then. A cartoon character named Charlie, the most popular one at the time. This was the phone Elias used to carry. The moment I realized it, my heart lurched out of rhythm. The phone was so old, it took a whole night on the charger before it would even turn on. The software hadn't been updated in ages, so it was slow. And when I happened to open the messages, one line hit me square in the eyes. I like you too. The number it was meant for was one I'd used 5 years ago. I turned to stone where I stood. 5 years ago, the day I left, I had confessed to him one last time and been turned down. He'd said it plainly then. I really don't like you. Stop clinging to me. I met Elias when I was just starting middle school. After my parents divorced, my mother brought me to live in a little town out in the countryside. He lived right next door. That July, my brother Aiden came to spend the summer, and he and Elias somehow became the best of friends. Before school started back up, Aiden made a point of introducing me to Elias. My sister's got her good points, but she's a bit stubborn, a bit set in her ways. Next time she gets into it with our mom, do me a favor and step in. I was 14 that year, right in the thick of my most rebellious phase, and I wasn't especially close with Aiden. So I didn't much care for Elias either, my brother's best friend. One night, I got into another fight with my mother. She grabbed me by the collar and hauled me out the door. If you've got the nerve, then stop eating my food. Stop wearing the clothes I buy. You think I ever wanted to raise you? The door slammed shut behind me. I lifted my head and looked at the few scattered stars in the sky. And right then, I heard Elias's voice. You haven't eaten, have you? Come on, I'll take you for a late-night bite. He led me through a winding alley to a little wonton shop on the east side of town. A dozen little pork wontons, steaming hot. I picked up the white porcelain spoon, blew on them, and ate in silence. Elias sat across from me and gave a helpless little laugh. I don't think I've done anything to offend you, and I'm pretty close with your brother. He's not my brother, I said, sour enough that Elias understood at once. I was kicking the dog because I was angry at the world. I left a few small bills on the table, turned, and walked off. He followed slowly behind me, tossing out a word or two now and then. I didn't answer, but I kept listening. At the mouth of the alley, he sighed. Even from a distance, it can't be easy. Your mother raising you on her own. I stopped short and turned around. She doesn't want to raise me. She fought to keep her son, not to hold on to her ex-husband. She's stuck raising the leftover kid, me. Elias went still, standing there. The more I said, the more worked up I got. You're Aiden's best friend. Your parents love you best of anyone. Of course you'd never understand. That's not true. His voice dropped low. I don't have a mother. The thing that can reach a girl in the deepest, most rebellious stretch of her youth, it's that, the feeling that someone understands. After that night, things between Elias and me eased a great deal. I'd only just transferred in, and being an outsider, I became the one the class froze out. The more I fought back, the harder the bullies came down on me. And then Elias would appear. He was 2 years older than me, tall, his arms roped with muscle. One swing of his fist could turn a losing fight completely around. Some boys my own age blocked my path once, shaking me down for money. He beat them until they tucked their tails and ran. He caught me by the wrist and pulled me straight out the school gate. There was a bicycle parked there. "Come on, there's a new bookstore." I sat on the crossbar in front, wrapped up in his 2 arms, the bell going ding ding. As we wobbled forward and through the thin cotton of my shirt, my back pressed against the rise and fall of his chest. Looking back, that was probably the beginning of the almost 15-year one-sided love I carried for Elias. But no matter how many times I laid my heart bare, his answer was always the same. "But Charlie, I really don't like you." He'd smile, helpless, and reach out to ruffle my hair. "You're Aiden's sister. Of course I'll always see you as a sister too." At 2:30 in the morning, I got a call from my brother. "Are you back at the old house yet?" I held Elias's old phone and fought to keep my voice as level as the sea after the waves have passed. "It's nothing. I just noticed the neighbor's window has some broken panes. Aren't you and Elias best friends? Tell him to come check on the place when he's free." On the other end, my brother went dead silent. I wanted to hide what was in my heart, so I added, "I don't mean anything by it. He's married now, after all. It'd be awkward for me to call him." A long time passed before Aiden finally spoke, slow and heavy. "Charlie, Elias didn't get married. 5 years ago, right before New Year, I got a call from the police. He's gone." After he said it, the air seemed to freeze, as if some invisible hand were closing around my heart. I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, and it was a long while before I found my voice. "What are you saying? Aiden Frike, just because you want me to give up hope, you'd lie to me about something like this?" I was frantic, nearly shouting. He only sighed and said he'd meant to keep it from me my whole life. Elias's dying wish had been that I never find out. "But Charlie, you're almost 30. When are you going to start living a normal life?" I was gasping for breath, and I made my decision fast. "I'm coming to you right now. Whatever it is, you tell me the whole thing to my face." Before I left, I slipped Elias's phone into my pocket. The old case had curled up at one edge. I ran my finger along it to smooth it flat, and it only curled worse. The cab driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror and finally couldn't help himself. "Sweetheart, whatever it is, it can be talked through. Don't do anything rash. Going to a train station this late at night, that's dangerous." I raised a hand to wipe my face and only then realized it was soaked with tears. The first time I confessed to Elias, I'd just finished 11th grade. After we split into tracks, my grades slipped, and when I asked for money for tutoring, my mother waved it away. Stir-frying at the stove, barely giving it a thought, she said, "A couple years back, your brother didn't waste money like that. If class isn't enough for you, how's eating out going to help? Aiden never needed it." "But I need it. Is that not allowed?" "So it's your whole name now, first and last?" She looked at me, her tone anything but pleased. No wonder they say having a daughter is nothing like having a son. Old enough now, and still doesn't know the first thing about manners or how the world works. I turned and walked off, but that night, before bed, she came and told me she'd spoken too harshly, told me not to be angry, and pressed some money into my hand to go try a few tutoring sessions. Stubborn, I wouldn't take it. Not long after, Aiden heard about it too. He sent me $3,000 and told me to find myself a physics tutor. I was surprised. "Where'd you get the money? Did Dad give it to you?" He hemmed and hawed. "Kids shouldn't ask so many questions. It's for you, so just take it and go get tutored." I had never once felt guilty taking my brother's money. 2 months later, when I'd spent it all, he sent more. That summer, he came to spend time with Elias again. And by chance, I overheard my brother ask him, "You're really not going to tell Charlie the truth? Most of that was money you earned working part-time." Under the quiet moonlight, Elias smiled gently. "Didn't you put in some, too? Charlie's your sister. It's just that a brother like me isn't as good to her as you are." Aiden swatted him. "Tell me straight. You've got feelings for Charlie, don't you?" Elias only smiled and said nothing. Tucked behind the wall, I quietly pulled my head back, my heart hammering in my chest. When Elias took his college entrance exams, he scored high enough to top the whole city. He could clearly have gone to the capital, but he chose to stay and study at the provincial university. I let myself dream a foolish girl's dream, that maybe, somewhere in that choice, there was a reluctance to leave me. After my own exams, he and Aiden both stood waiting for me outside the test center. I made up some excuse to shoo my brother off, then asked him, "You care about me this much. You must like me, right?" At 18, I still knew nothing about the shy, careful arts of a young woman. I just stared straight into Elias's eyes, burning for an answer. But he laughed. "Of course not. We've been neighbors for years, and I'm your brother's best friend. So I look after you a little, that's all." I didn't want to believe it, but Aiden came back and insisted on dragging me out to a celebration dinner. My scores weren't good enough. 2 years of physics tutoring, and it had still dragged my total down. So, in the end, I chose the school right next to Elias's. When I moved in, he and Aiden were already juniors, and they'd started early for summer internships, so they knew the campus like the backs of their hands. But when I arrived, only Elias came to meet me at the station. Aiden was off picking up his girlfriend at the airport. Elias took my suitcase and told me my brother had made him promise to keep me safe. I ducked my head. "And you?" "Me? Aiden has a girlfriend now, do you?" I looked up and caught the trace of a helpless smile in his eyes. "Stop fishing, Charlie. I'm not going to date you." Only Elias could refuse so gently and so completely. The very next day, right after turning me down, he called and told me to come downstairs and handed me a phone, the newest model there was. A reward for getting into college. I took it and clung on like a leech. "In what capacity are you giving me something this expensive?" I leaned in close, staring at him without blinking. Elias couldn't take it and stepped back, catching me as I tipped forward. "As your brother's friend. That good enough?" For years after that, I never once saw another girl appear at Elias's side. He didn't seem to have any other close friends either. And he was always good to me. When I got bullied, he'd step in for me. When my mother cut off my allowance, he'd slip me a little money now and then. During finals my sophomore year, the boy behind me threw a cheat sheet onto my desk and framed me, and the college wanted to make an example of me. As luck would have it, my brother had a final that afternoon. So, once again, it was Elias who came. He'd always been gentle, always forgiving. Even turning down my confessions, he never spoke a hard word. That was the first time I saw the edge in him. The tall, lean boy of years ago had grown into a man. He planted himself in front of me and spoke like a blade. "My sister wouldn't do this. The camera in the exam room happened to break? What a coincidence. There's a public camera just outside. It can zoom in. Let's call the police and have them pull the footage." In the end, the college had to apologize. The boy, it turned out, was a relative of some associate professor. Because my total score ranked above his, and he wanted to study abroad, which meant he needed the top student ranking, he tried to take it from me. In front of the faculty, he had to swallow it and say, "Sorry." Under Elias's insistence, the college promised me that as long as I finished my coursework and passed my exams, they wouldn't stand in the way of my graduating. When the two of us left the office, it was already 5 in the afternoon. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Probably my brother. I stared at Elias's back, straight as a stalk of bamboo, my heart beating faster and faster. The second you heard it was about me, you came this fast? He stopped, turned his head, and gave me the answer I had heard I don't know how many times. You're Aiden's sister. Aiden and I are best friends. Later, I joined the student council. One day, walking with the council president to drop off some papers, he suddenly stopped. There's a leaf on your head. Hold still, I'll get it for you. I looked up and saw Elias coming toward us. Our eyes met, 4 of them, and he froze, then turned and walked away. Frightened, I called his name. Elias. He lowered his gaze, and when he lifted his eyes to me, there was a polite, restrained distance in them. Charlie, I've got somewhere to be. I watched his back, and it struck me all at once. In all the time we'd known each other, that was the first time he'd ever called me by my full name. That evening, I got a message from my brother, asking if I was seeing someone. Had Elias told him? Aiden didn't deny it. As long as your boyfriend's a good man, dating's fine. But Charlie, you and Elias really don't suit each other. Why? In that moment, all sorts of wild guesses rose up in my mind. Some of them not even sane. Was he dying of some illness, and that was why he wouldn't hold me back? Was he undercover for some organization, and that was why he couldn't? On the other end, my brother laughed weakly. Charlie, can you not be so bitter? I fell quiet, got hold of myself, and said softly, I'm sorry. In a few more months, Elias and I will both graduate. You should live your own life, Charlie. When summer came, my brother and Elias both graduated. I went to a flower shop and bought 2 bouquets. For Aiden, sunflowers, and for Elias. For Elias, a bouquet of white roses. I watched him in his graduation gown step up onto the stage to take his diploma, bowing slightly as the dean shifted the tassel on his cap. And I bowed my own head, and the tears dropped one by one onto the white roses. Elias wouldn't accept the flowers I'd brought, as if to sever every last strand of longing in me. He wouldn't even let me come to the graduation party with them. But I trailed along in secret anyway, and got myself falling down drunk and toppled into his chest. He steadied my swaying body and sighed. You drank all that? Won't your stomach hurt? Drink some honey water when you're home. Let me take you back to your dorm. I knew he rented a little place out on the edge of the city, near his company, so I let him take my hand and lead me forward, obedient. But at the gate of the apartment complex, Elias suddenly flung my hand away. He turned and looked at me, his eyes gone cold as ice. Charlie, are you a girl who has any shame at all? Getting yourself drunk and throwing yourself at a man who doesn't like you. It's genuinely humiliating. I stared at him, dazed, the liquor swallowing my whole mind, and it took me a long time to find my voice. What did you say? He didn't stop there. He put out a hand and shoved me to the ground. I said, you cling like a leech, and I really do regret it. That night your mother threw you out, I never should have said a word to you. My palms scraped raw against the ground, grit lodging in the broken skin. But Elias was already walking away, and he didn't so much as glance back. In the end, it was my brother who came to take me home. He disinfected the wound, then stood in front of me and let out a long, heavy sigh. Charlie, can't you just forget about Elias? I hear someone at your school is pursuing you. You're a beautiful girl, so why keep throwing yourself at him? Slowly, I nodded. I won't like him anymore. For about half a year after that, I had no contact with Elias. He was a man of few words. His profile was always blank. Me, I was the opposite. I could post 10 things in 3 days. Elias never once liked a single one, and I assumed he simply didn't look. Until, one time, a boy from the class next door invited me to a movie, and I photographed the 2 tickets and posted them. That night, Elias liked the post and commented with a little moon emoji. Good night. By the time I looked again, he'd deleted it. Carrying a nervous, angry heat, I messaged him privately. I'm seeing someone. Elias replied. I saw. Your boyfriend's handsome and smart too. Planning to do your master's with him? That's good. It was like punching a pillow stuffed with cotton. I threw the phone down and buried my face in the pillow, and let that feeling of helplessness and suffocation swallow me whole. I'd lied. I wasn't seeing that boy at all. After the movie, he'd stood outside my dorm and squared the accounts with me down to the cent. Charlie, I'm a firm believer in men and women being equal, so there's no such thing as one of us pursuing the other here. The tickets and the drinks came to 109. Just transfer me 54 and we're square. There will never be a second Elias in this world. A man who would hand every cent he earned to the girl next door just so she could get physics tutoring, wanting nothing back, not even wanting her to know it was him, and who still, no matter what, would not let himself stay by her side. The winter I graduated from college, my mother died. In her last 3 years, she'd been bedridden, and before she closed her eyes, she told me that the year before, after my father remarried, he'd had a son with his new wife. Poor Aiden. If a mother doesn't love him, who knows if he'll ever find a wife? She gripped my hand with her own, thin as a bundle of twigs, and made me swear I would never fight my brother for the inheritance. My jewelry I'm leaving to you as your dowry. The savings and the old house all go to Aiden. Charlie, don't hate me for it. With her last breath in front of me, her hand went slack and fell. Charlie. It was the name she had longed to give the son she was so sure she was carrying. And then, unwilling to let it go, she'd given it to me instead. My mother had always carried a resentment in her heart. She believed that if I had only been a boy, she and my father would never have divorced, and she'd never have had to move us back to that little town. My mother's funeral wasn't a large affair, and in the crowd of mourners, I saw Elias. It had been a long time. Just before Aiden and I had gotten into it, he stubbornly wanted to split the money from the house down the middle, half to each of us. I'd screamed at him, "Who needs anything of hers? Since I was little, she and Dad only ever loved you. What good does it do me? You playing the good guy in front of my face? Go tell them to love me a little too." My brother's eyes went red, and he told me he was sorry, though in the end, none of it was his fault. Despairing and raw, I bolted for the door, and at the threshold I ran straight into Elias. He'd grown much thinner, which made him look even taller and even more alone, the weariness of a long road hanging on him. He caught my swaying body before it could fall, then lowered his head and softly said my name. Charlie. Held there in his arms, I trembled and, past all caring, sobbed out loud. If she gave birth to me, why couldn't she love me? Aiden was the son she was proudest of, the one raised best. Everyone likes him. I'm difficult. I'm not good at anything, and no one likes me. Who says no one likes you? Elias suddenly cut in. At least there's me. He didn't finish the second half. But those few words brought back all at once the feeling I'd spent 2 whole years crushing down. And that was when I understood how stubborn I was in loving him, that it seemed I could never, never stop hoping for Elias. Looking back, the half year that followed was the happiest stretch of my whole life. Elias came back. On my brother's urging, he and Aiden had a long talk. He had no power to control what our parents thought or felt, he said, so all he could do was try to make it up to me. Aiden signed a contract putting the old house in my name. I didn't need it. What I'd wanted, all along, was never the house or the money. I wanted love. I wanted fairness. I wanted to be treated as an equal. And right up until she died, that was the one thing I never got. But at least Elias no longer refused to let me close, the way he used to. I passed the exam for a master's program at his school. Busy as my studies kept me, I still made time to see him. All his years of turning me down had left me too afraid to blurt out a careless confession anymore. So I didn't say it, and he didn't ask, and the two of us just drew slowly, quietly closer. When Elias got his year-end bonus, he used it to buy a matching pair of phones, same model, different colors, and gave me the pale purple one. "The one I gave you before is getting old." I took it and bought a case. After picking through a whole pile, Elias would only agree to a soft, clear one. I stuck a cartoon snake on it, his favorite character back then, and handed it back. He didn't mind at all, just looked at me with a flustered little smile. "What a coincidence! This character's named Charlie. You're named Charlie, too." I looked at the case with its haphazard sticker, nodded, satisfied, and gave it back to him. "You know, I actually used to hate my name," I told him. "In grade school, the other girls all had soft, pretty names, and mine was so plain. So unisex, the teachers were always mistaking me for a boy. On top of my parents' sour faces every time they said it, I really did want to change it." It was the middle of the night, and Elias and I sat on a bridge watching the wide, dark water flow past beneath us. But now, knowing your favorite cartoon character is named Charlie too, suddenly I'm glad I never changed it. The heavy dark of the night, only the pale yellow glow of a street lamp not far off. And when I turned to look at Elias, the tips of his ears had gone faintly red. What kind of childish thing is that to say? A child wouldn't say it, I thought. I leaned in close to his ear on purpose and whispered with a giggle, "A grown woman would." "Elias, I think your name is beautiful. Where does it come from?" He froze, and it was a long while before he answered. "My mother chose it before she died. What it means exactly, I'll tell you someday, when there's a chance." But I couldn't wait for someday. A month later, my very first paper was accepted and published in a journal. I went to find Elias and drink to it, and got careless and had too much. Leaving the restaurant, passing through a dark, empty alley, I suddenly pulled him in, pushed him back against the wall, tipped my face up, and kissed him. But too drunk to steady myself, I missed, and got so upset about it I was nearly in tears. Elias tilted my chin up, let out a breath and kissed me, gently, a short and pure kiss. And it left me grinning like a fool the whole way back to my dorm. The next day, sober, I settled my nerves before going to find him. But I messaged him again and again and he didn't answer. Not until dusk when I got a call. "Let's meet, Charlie." His voice was cold to the point of strangeness. I stood outside the school gate a long time before I saw him. And the first thing Elias said to me was again my full name. "Charlie, I got bored of this." I stood stock still, and it was a long time before I could react. Let me be honest with you. 2 years ago, the company sent me to the capital to work. And while I was there, I got into a steady relationship. I came back this time mostly because it felt like a bit of novelty. You've liked me all these years after all. Yeah, Elias was very tall, and standing there straight, looking at me, it felt as if he were looking down from a great height. But you really are bland. It's the kind of thing that gets a person bored fast. My girlfriend's calling me back now. We should end this. In his eyes, clear as water, my tear-soaked face was mirrored back at me, and he was even smiling. "Look at you, crying so ugly, and your kissing's terrible. That one favor from high school you've clung to all these years. You're the easiest woman I've ever met. And don't go thinking about revenge. I never once accepted a confession from you. So stop clinging. I'm getting married." And with that, he turned and walked away. I stood rooted to the spot, and for the longest time I could not make myself move. It was like a bullet through the heart, like a sharp knife cutting my heart into little pieces that slipped out through the hole the bullet left. The pain came on like a tide and swallowed me. I lifted a hand and wiped my mouth, as if the warmth Elias had left there the night before still lingered. And I wiped it harder and harder until I tasted blood, refusing to stop, wanting to scrub away every trace of him and the memories of all those years with it. Now, here's how it all looked from Elias's side. That afternoon, Vic went off the rails again. He downed most of a bottle of cheap liquor when he suddenly snatched the ashtray off the table and cracked it across me, cursing, "You ungrateful little wretch, just like your mother. I put the food in your mouth and still you go around with your nose in the air like you're worth something. Why don't you strip naked and stand out on the street, see how much you'd sell for?" I turned my head to dodge it, looked at Vic calmly, and went back to my room. Vic was my biological father, however much I refused to admit it. The man was a lunatic. He'd had a violent, possessive obsession with my mother. When things were good, he'd have plucked the stars out of the sky for her. But the moment he had a drink in him or lost at the tables, he became a beast, smashing everything in the house. When I was 3, my mother fell gravely ill and died. Vic took what little savings she'd left and gambled it all away, and he'd been jailed twice, until even the factory wouldn't hire him anymore. It was only then, out of pure desperation, that he dragged me back to the countryside. The cost of living there was low. A few hundred a month in welfare was enough to get by comfortably. In other people's eyes, Vic was hardly ever home. But no one knew how extreme he was in front of the people who belonged to him. He'd even warned me once, "Your mother's dead. Now it's just you and me. You'll never get away from me as long as you live. And don't even think about dating or taking a wife or having children, or nobody gets to live in peace." I hated it. Looking at that man was like looking at an animal. And Vic wasn't the least bit angry about that. He'd burst out laughing, pour himself another glass and say, "You're my son, which makes you a little animal too." I was a gentle, well-mannered person. I was also cold and indifferent. The afternoon I came home from school and learned that the long, empty house next door had new people in it, I didn't much care, and I barely spoke to Charlie at all. Until one summer afternoon when Vic happened to be out, and I was watering the grapevine in the yard, and a face appeared at the door left ajar. Smiling, the boy said, "Hi, I'm Aiden. I'm the older brother of Charlie next door. I wanted to ask how my sister and mother are doing, but neither of them will tell me." And so I became Aiden's friend, the first true friend of my short life. At first I only got close to Charlie because her brother asked me to. And then came that night. The two of us bent over the low table eating wontons, the little girl still stubbornly holding on to her anger, refusing to look at me, just eating her food. The quiet moonlight fell across her still furious face, and I thought, she's kind of adorable. I had to admit Aiden was a good brother. But it was also true that he'd been given so much by their parents, things Charlie would never once have in this whole life. In that moment, I found, out of nowhere, that I felt for her. On the way home, watching her sulking little face, I don't know what possessed me, but I said the thing I said. I don't have a mother, so there's no one who loves me either. A person as clever as I was, of course, knew that saying it would pull her onto my side of the line. But everything that came after slipped out of my control. Charlie had bright, quick eyes, tilted up a little at the corners. When she was angry, she'd go wide-eyed, exactly like a little hedgehog. She was never the type to let anyone bully her. Cross her, and she'd strike back at once. And if she couldn't win, she'd fight anyway, because otherwise, she said, they'd decide she was easy to push around. On the walks home, she'd chatter about anything and everything. How, as a child, she'd fight her brother over toys and food, knowing full well she couldn't beat him, but fighting anyway. So their parents could never say she was the one who didn't want them. That was Charlie, stubborn, clinging fiercely to the principles she'd made for herself. and yet more patient, more full of grit than most people ever are. Which is why, later, no matter how many times I turned down her confessions, she went right on hoping. I liked her too, but I could not let myself have her. Vic was like a venomous snake coiled in the dark. There was never any telling when he'd come lunging out. Any money I earned, he'd take and gamble away or use to warn me off. No dating, no giving anything to anyone. And whether he did it by accident or on purpose, now and then he'd bring up Charlie in front of me, as if to threaten me, to put me on notice. Aiden knew how things stood in my house. The two of us thought for a long time and never came up with anything. Vic was a thug. Ordinary people can't deal with a man like that. The only way was to keep as far from him as possible. But between him and me, there was blood, and no matter how you cut at it, it will not sever. In the end, Aiden sighed and said, "Stay away from Charlie. I don't want my sister getting hurt." I lowered my eyes. All right. And I did try as much as I could to avoid her. We worked well together, he and I. Neither of us ever told her the truth because, with a temper like hers, the moment she knew, she'd have declared war on Vic on the spot or gone straight to the police. And a man like Vic, as long as he was still breathing, as long as there was one breath left in him, I would never get free. At the graduation ceremony, I didn't answer her, and I wouldn't let her come to the party with us. Looking at the sorrow in her eyes, my heart clenched, and the helplessness closed over me. Aiden was talking with his girlfriend beside him, undoing her crooked ponytail and tying it up again for her. A small thing, and so intimate, the kind of closeness Charlie and I would never be allowed. But still I went soft when the little girl got herself drunk and stumbled into my arms. It was as if I could hear my own heart pounding at my ears like a drum. "You drank all that," I said quietly. "Won't your stomach hurt? Drink some honey water at home. Let me take you back." She murmured, "Yes, yes," and put out her hand, obedient, and let me lead her home. It was June, a summer night, a cool breeze carrying the faint scent of flowers. Her hand in mine was soft and dry. Charlie was like a hedgehog. She looked like nothing but sharp spines, wishing she could take on the whole world, but give her two little candies, and she'd shrink back, shy, and show you the softest belly. I wasn't as good as she thought I was, I told myself. The things I gave her weren't hard for me to give. It was only that she'd been given so little by her parents that she treasured whatever I gave her, as if it were everything. "Elias." She spoke up all of a sudden, her voice sad, thick with the liquor. "Can we try dating? I don't believe you don't like me." My heart in chaos. I nearly couldn't hold on. Nearly said yes right then. But before I could open my mouth, I saw a figure standing under the dim street lamp, not far from the gate of the complex. Vic was looking at me, the corner of his mouth curling into a smile, and he mouthed the words at me. "Girlfriend?" It was like falling into an abyss, jolted awake out of a beautiful dream. And after that I said those things to Charlie. Even now remembering it turns my stomach. But it was exactly what he wanted. For the next 2 years, she didn't contact me. Then Vic ran out of money again. "500, son. Give your old man a little spending money. Or that girl. She listens to your every word, doesn't she? Sell her off and there's your money." I asked him coldly what he wanted. He spread his hands. "Or come with me. A friend of mine's in business. He needs a smart kid like you." I knew perfectly well that his business was nothing but illegal things. But I went. I didn't want Vic aiming himself at Charlie, and I thought there might be a chance, somewhere in it, to break free of him. The half year that followed was no different from hell. Days at a job, nights running all over in the dark with Vic, into the places the light can't reach, The casinos, the dens, the pits where girls were bought and sold. I gathered evidence, and then I handed it to the police and had Vic thrown behind bars. Once the nausea of it passed, I felt like I'd been set free. I wanted to go back and find Charlie. But when I opened my phone, the first thing I saw was her newest post. 2 movie tickets. And there, in the corner of the frame, plainly, the hand of some young man. In that moment, I felt every ounce of strength go out of me. She was a clever, beautiful girl. There were so many people who liked her. How could I have imagined she would just stand there and wait for me forever? So I went to the Capitol to work. It was only when I heard that Charlie's mother had died that I rushed back. There was a piece missing from my soul always, and it seemed the only thing that could fill it was holding her. The night we drank to celebrate her paper, we were both a little drunk, and I couldn't hold back, and I kissed her. A clumsy, reckless kiss, when we hadn't even settled what we were, and that was a discourtesy to her. After I saw her home, I took out my phone and started to write her a message. I'd gotten only 4 words in. I like you too, when a hoarse, unbearably familiar voice sounded at my ear. Well, son, you've been living pretty well since you put your own father in prison, haven't you? Vic had only been a small fish among the accomplices, not tied to anything major, so his sentence was light and he'd been released. The first thing he did was come find me, the son who'd handed him over with his own 2 hands. Do you have any idea how I lived in there? And you, out here, sweet as anything with that little girl, after you sold your own father out? I know that girl. Isn't she the neighbor your family lived beside all those years? What was her name? Charlie? A college student, no less. She'd fetch a fine price, give her the name Charlie, send her over to a certain place. She'll sell well. Under his snake's stare, a despair rose up in me. My life would go on like this forever, because Vic's blood ran in me, and I would never in this life be able to cut myself away from him, and anyone who came near me would be dragged down with me. All at once I roared. I threw myself at him, knocked him to the ground, and hit him twice, and then I gripped him by the shoulders and ground the words out one at a time. I'll go with you. However you want to make your money, I'll help you. But don't you touch her, or I will die dragging you down with me. Vic spat out a mouthful of blood. Fine. Tomorrow afternoon you come with me. Don't bring a phone. Don't even think of pulling anything. I went back to the old house. I put the phone in the drawer. I took nothing with me. Nothing but the hair tie Charlie had secretly wound onto my wrist back in 11th grade. And then I went to find her. And I said a great many things I don't want to remember. The evening wind cut into my skin like sharp little knives, bit by bit by bit. In my mind's eye, I was covered in blood, and I couldn't reach my hand out toward her. Charlie was wearing a very pretty dress, carefully made up. She must have thought I'd come to confess. My heart wrung itself tight, but I kept my face cold. Stop clinging to me. I'm getting married. And the moon in her eyes shattered on the spot. After that came the cold of winter. I volunteered to be the one who stepped forward and confessed, the informant planted inside. They stripped me bare and dragged me into the yard and opened my veins one at a time. Maybe the calm on my face was too much to bear. It displeased them, and they brought out a syringe, a traitor, and still so arrogant. As it happened, a new product had just come in from overseas, and no one had yet tested it at the maximum dose. So they used me as the guinea pig. The amount they put into me was double what they gave anyone else. In the depths of that pain, I felt my own life beginning to ebb. My leg hurt terribly. 2 of the dogs in the yard had gotten at the flesh of it. But none of that mattered. This time it was enough. Enough to send Vic to his execution. Enough to bring down that illegal ring. If I was going to die, at least my death would mean something. I remembered high school. Charlie reading old poems in Chinese class. I'd wait for her on my bicycle, and she'd nestle against my chest and recite, nodding along. I wish you were a star, and I the moon, so night on night we'd shine on one another. But I was already the star. My name, the one my mother gave me, meant the evening star. So she would have to be my moon. The day Elias died, the black of night lay over everything. No stars, no moon. When the police called and told my brother to come collect his effects, they weren't really effects at all. Just a single hair tie, red and white polka dots, filthy by then. Aiden looked at my red-rimmed eyes and understood at once. That was yours, wasn't it? Slowly, I nodded. Back then, scrunchies were all the rage. There was a little shop in town that carried the prettiest styles, and every time new stock came in, it sold out. The prices were already high and only climbed. I couldn't get one, and I'd grumbled about it once to Elias. The next day, he bought it and gave it to me. The owner made me take one home, he said, and slid the soft polka-dotted scrunchie onto my wrist. Here, take it. I used it to tie my hair for over half a year, until it stretched out and wouldn't hold any more. And on New Year's Eve, while we were watching fireworks, I wound it twice around his wrist as a New Year's gift. He looked down at it and laughed it off. If you don't like it, then never mind. I do. Whatever you give me, I like it. He handed me a sparkler. Charlie, Happy New Year. There was no body, my brother told me. After they used him for the maximum dose test, that ring of people dragged him off and burned him, and nothing was left. All Aiden could do was bury the hair tie in his grave. His voice was choked. Countless images rose up in my mind. Why hadn't he told me back then? His last words had been that he didn't want me to know. And besides, at the time I'd been in trouble with my studies, low and fragile. And if I'd learned this on top of it, he was afraid I'd break. My brother took my hand, cold as ice, in his. You know, at first, when he wouldn't accept your confessions, I was angry too. But once I met his father, I understood. He refused you to protect you. People aren't saints. In the end, he couldn't control every word and every act perfectly. And that's why, again and again, he'd soften and let himself be good to you. And that's why you kept on hoping. I was frustrated with him, but I couldn't blame him. Being born into a family like that was Elias's misfortune. At least Vic was executed 4 years ago. And then he said many, many more things. From beginning to end, I stayed silent. There are too many memories tied to Elias. I could turn them over and over and never reach the end of them. It was only that the tears wouldn't stop, as if they would go on forever. In the end, even my brother could no longer console me. He just sat across from me, quietly keeping me company, watching the sky outside the window slowly fill with light. "Horse," I said, "go home. Your wife and the kids will be up by now." He looked at me, worried. "But I'm worried about you, Charlie. Don't do anything foolish." I shook my head. "I'm fine. Haven't I lived on my own all these years? I won't do anything foolish. Elias wouldn't want to see me go looking for death either." My brother sighed, and after a while, hesitant, he spoke up. Do you want to go and see him?" Elias's grave was in the cemetery in the next town over. So all these years it turned out, he had been very close to me. I simply never knew. Just as I had once confessed to him again and again, brash and careless, banking on the fact that he'd never dare speak a hard word. In a place I couldn't see, he had given away the whole of his true heart and held on to it all these years. I steeled myself for a long time before I decided to go and see him. I bought a bouquet of white roses at the flower shop outside the cemetery. The year he graduated, no matter what I did, he wouldn't accept my flowers. But now, he no longer had the right to refuse. The weather that day was lovely. I climbed the steps, paved with blue-green stone, and at last, I saw the black and white photograph on the headstone. It was a picture of him at 18, one I had taken with that new phone. I laid the white roses before the stone and sat down on the ground, which the sun had already warmed. If it hadn't been absolutely necessary, Elias would never have let me suffer like that. Not while he lived, and not after. "I don't know if you like white roses," I said, "but even if you don't get to refuse me a second time." "Elias, honestly, I'd already guessed your name was your mother's gift to you. I kept waiting for you to tell me the rest. But it seems that even to the day I die, I won't get to hear it. That's all right. 100 years from now, when we meet again down among the springs of the dead, you can tell me then, and that message you never sent. Whatever else you wanted to say, you tell me then. It won't be too late. I know what I am. I'm a child who can't repay a wound with kindness, and can't find it in herself to forgive, with an open heart, all the time she was treated unfairly. Everyone tells me that at the very least my parents didn't abuse me, that they fed me and clothed me and sent me to school, and that to weigh every little slight the way I do is petty and small. But Elias never once thought of me like that. Everything I didn't get from my parents, from the time I was 14, Elias made up to me, all of it. And even though he never once let himself accept me, how could I ever believe he didn't like me? Still, it's all right now. I've grown up a good deal. I don't fly off the handle the way I used to. Don't do things on a whim. At school, there are some unruly students who are harder to handle than even I was back then. And all I do is go along with them and try to understand where they're coming from. The college has drawn up its list. Barring anything unexpected, next year, I'll be made an associate professor. My colleagues say I'm capable and easy to get along with, and they even tried to set me up with someone. But a marriage like the one they described would take so much patience, so much accommodating of each other, and I find myself so bland and expect so little from it that I turned it down. I sat there until my legs went numb, then quietly shifted and reached out and touched the photograph on the stone, cold and hard. Was that, too, the last thing Elias felt before he died? I thought back to my 20th birthday, when he and I hadn't yet fully ended things. My brother was away at a competition in another province, so it was Elias who brought the cake and celebrated with me. That night I made a wish. I wanted to go up north to watch the stars under the aurora, and then I asked him straight out, "Elias, do you want to come with me?" He smiled. "I'll follow you anywhere." Even then, I think, he already knew that we would never get to go together. My tears rolled down. Softly, I said, "It's all right. One day I'll get the chance to go and see them for you." After I left the cemetery, my brother called to ask where I was. His wife had made some beef in chili oil, and she told him to send it over. "I'm at the old house," I said quietly. He was silent a moment. "You went to see Elias?" "Yes." "Do you want me to come be with you?" "Charlie, you don't have to." I rubbed my eyes. "It's fine. The old house is being torn down anyway. I'll eat a bowl of wontons and go home." I hung up. By dusk, the town had lit up. These past few years, the little place had grown at a dizzying pace. High-rises all around now, the shops no longer as behind the times as they'd been 15 years ago. I retraced my memory for a long while, and still couldn't find the bookstore, or the shop where we used to buy odds and ends. And the little wonton place Elias and I had eaten at so many times was gone too. In the end, I just found some other shop and ordered a bowl of wontons in chili broth, and I'd barely had a few bites before the spice had my nose running and the sweat beading on my face. The shop was empty of other customers, and the owner sat down beside me and chatted, and before either of us noticed, we'd been talking a good while. "Oh, you mean the wonton place?" he said. "That was my dad's. He was retired and bored with nothing to do, so he opened it up." He drew on a cigarette and went quiet a moment. But last winter, he didn't make it through. He's gone now. I grip the spoon in my hand. I'm sorry. I hope you're not too heavy with grief. It's all right. It's been 2 years. I've come to terms with it. Besides, someone's gone 20, 30 years, and then it's my turn. He breathed out a plume of white smoke and went on, slow. These last few years, this place has changed so much. Not long before, I told my dad to give up the shop, and he wasn't happy about it. Said he had a real skill, that all the old neighbors loved his food. There was a young couple years back who used to come to his place all the time. Every month the boy would quietly slip him some money and tell him to give the girl an extra spoonful of filling and a few extra wontons whenever she came in. I always used to tease him for being so pleased with himself. But I have to admit, his craft really was something. I can't match it. A pity none of it will ever come back. I sat there frozen at the table, and after that I didn't take in another word until the owner asked, uneasy, "Miss, why are you crying? Is it too spicy?" "It can't be. I already adjusted the ratio of broth to chili." I pulled out a tissue, wiped my face, and shook my head. "It's nothing." After I left, I went back once more to the old house. It was nearly leveled, only bricks and splintered wood on the ground, no way to tell whose home had been whose. I sat down on the pile of rubble, a can of beer in my hand, and raised it to the far-off stars scattered across the night sky. "You liked me all along, didn't you? You liar!" I drank, and didn't notice that the corners of my eyes had gone red, and that no matter how I wiped them, the tears would not stop. Next time we meet, tell a better lie. Once the liquor had soaked all the way in, it was as if I'd gone back to before I turned 15. 14-year-old me and Elias, hunched over that little low table, dried shrimp and seaweed in the broth, hot filling in wontons that steamed and steamed. And that's why I never saw it. From the very first, from beginning to end, he had always been looking at me. In all the decades that came after, I never again found a wonton shop like that little one. And I never again found the one lone star in a night full of storm. Thank you all for listening.